Good evening, everybody. It's about 5:06 on Wednesday, April 11th, 2018. This is Jim Shalick. The board has called an emergency conference call meeting tonight regarding the potential relocation of Precinct 418. Let me take attendance to see if we have a quorum. Present with me is David Naiman.
Here.
Okay. Mary Ann Keefe.
Here.
Nahid Kozame.
Yes.
Alan Banoff.
Here.
Is Alex Vincent on the phone yet? Jackie Phillips? Okay, we have a quorum. Present at the Board of Elections, Mike Subin, Margie Rohr, Kevin Kopinski, Margaret Jurgensen, Lisa Marino, Allison McLaughlin, Chris Zizit, and we have one guest, Dolly Kildee. Welcome, Dolly. Okay, we are here because there's a deadline tomorrow to submit our precincts. So first, David called me today, and I just want to talk. We always talk about the agenda, and David brought up the topic that B'nai Israel has said recently, now that they are willing to become a polling place. So based on that, David wanted to expand the agenda. I do think it's related.
Actually, if I might, you don't necessarily have to expand the agenda. It could be an amendment to what comes up.
Okay.
In that agenda.
It is related, and yeah. I said David I would bring it up. So David, why don't you bring up before we discuss 418?
You sure you want me to talk first, not second? Whatever. I'll do whatever you want.
All right. Well,
I can do it if you want.
Yeah, because it
Okay.
might impact what we're deciding about 418.
Sure.
I just want to, on the record, I want to thank Alan and David. They spent a lot of time looking at Alan looked at the church and David at the school. So I just wanted to thank them for their extra efforts to help us tonight.
Happy to help.
You're welcome.
My understanding from Margaret's email was that B'nai Israel was deciding if they were available at the polling place for 418. They were deciding that last night. And so I guess I learned it when you and I were trying to connect with each other today, and I asked you by text, since I couldn't get out of the meeting I was in, if we had heard from them, and the answer was that we had, and that they're willing to do this. That was the very first time that we knew they'd been talked about, and they had previously said that they were not able to be a polling place. That was the first time that we knew that they're able to be a polling place for this election. So what got me thinking about B'nai Israel was I was trying to imagine what it would be like if B'nai Israel was the polling place for 418. If B'nai Israel were the polling place for 418, the voters who live closest, B'nai Israel is actually technically, I believe, I think it's 428. It's about 100 yards away from 430. It's on the north side of Montrose Road. I was trying to imagine what the public reaction would be if we had a polling place at B'nai Israel that was very close to the voters in 430, but they were still assigned to the polling place in Richard Montgomery, which is 2 to 3 miles away, depending on where in the precinct you live.
So the voters now that are at Richard Montgomery would be
not all the voters, the voters from that precinct.
Right.
Remember, Richard Montgomery.
It would be closer for them to go to B'nai Israel.
Far closer.
Okay.
It would be essentially the way that precinct, and we talked about this, I think, in one of our previous conversations. The way the population is for precinct 430, most of the population of that precinct is in the southern part of that precinct that is near Montrose Road. There's some of that precinct, I believe, I'm not 100% certain of this, that is near East Jefferson. But the vast majority of the northern part of that precinct, when you look at the land area, is the golf course at Woodmont Country Club, and then a number of office buildings and Clyde's Tower Oaks. There's not a lot of residences that are in the northern part of that precinct. So the polling place at B'nai Israel would be really immediately adjoining that precinct, and would be more difficult for precinct 418 because of crossing Montrose Road, which is quite the major road. So anyway, so part of what I was thinking when I was thinking about the possibility of B'nai Israel for 418 is that if 418 were to go to either the Lutheran Church or to Tilden Middle School, that B'nai Israel is now telling us that they're available and that they might be available for 430. I think that because it would be so much more convenient for the voters, I think it would be a very popular move among the people who live there, because they would avoid having to go to Richard Montgomery and be in a place that has multiple entrances and and in a polling place that would be in the cafeteria with another polling place and all that. So anyway, so that was my thought process. If it's yeah, go ahead.
No, I was going to turn to Kevin because it's not on the It's not on the agenda technically. I want to turn to Kevin and see how he feels about. Can we consider it? Not that we're going to do it, but is it something that we can consider?
Before you opine, let me just one thought, which is obviously there was no way for us to even consider this as a possibility until we knew that there was a polling place that was available, and we learned all of that in the context of a discussion of the relocation of 418. There really wasn't a possible way to notice this when there wasn't a polling place being considered, and it really is an outgrowth of the conversation that is on the agenda. So,
well, unfortunately, I don't believe that it can be considered because of the change in the law that took effect last year, which was the administrative policy affecting voting rights. Was a bill that actually this board spoke about at some length, and I recall some discussion about how it could become problematic in terms of this kind of issue in terms of flexibility. The administrative policy affecting voting rights, which is defined in section 1101 of the election law article, provides that administrative policy affecting voting rights means any action relating to voter registration, provisional voting, absentee voting, or the location of a polling place or early voting center. And under section 1-305, regarding the requirements for change in administrative policy affecting voting rights, subsection A specifically provides that the state board or a local board may not consider a change in an administrative policy affecting voting rights at a meeting unless the board has posted a prominent public notice on its website at least 48 hours in advance of the meeting, stating that the board will consider an administrative policy affecting voting rights at the meeting. And it goes on to describe what kind of notice would be required to include a brief description of the change. So I don't disagree that David's raised a very logical issue, but unfortunately, given the notice problems, I don't believe that this board can comply with the requirements of section 1305 of the election law article to consider a change beyond what was posted as it relates to 418.
Now, Kevin, what you just read, and I don't have it in front of me, but it sounded like what you said was that the requirement was to have a notice that something in this category was going to be discussed. That an administrative decision about voting rights was going to be discussed, and we have put out a notice that says that. Does it say that it has to explicitly say a particular precinct is being discussed?
I think the clear import of the statute is that individual voters who would be affected by a change in policy, namely, in this particular instance, those voters at 408 who would have their polling place.
You mean 430?
I mean 430.
Well, in this particular case, we provided notice that there would be a change, at 418.
Right.
That those individuals should be given the opportunity to be present and have some input on that change. Individuals that are in 430 would not have any notice of that, and I think the clear import of the statute is to provide those individuals the opportunity to be given notice. So I think the statute logically read is that if you're going to affect the voting rights of voters in a particular location, polling location, those are the individuals who have to be given notice. And because the only people who were placed on notice would be individuals as it relates to 418, that would be the only polling place that would be subject to change now. Certainly on Monday, there could be discussion of 4:30,
But Monday's too late for the state?
This is Mary Ann. I have a question, not being a lawyer with your discussion on this. Is there some particular outreach that was done to precinct 418 for this meeting?
No.
Other than just posting on the website that we were holding a meeting and what we'd be discussing.
That's correct.
And Mary Ann, that's what the statute provides for.
Because the way you were reading it, Kevin, I got the impression that it somehow was the fact that voters in that precinct, had some specific notice. But that's not what it says. Is that correct?
That's correct. It requires notice to be provided on the website, and as you'll recall, as the board considered a variety of changes in polling places due to construction and for other reasons, every month those potential changes were posted on the website to comply with the requirements of Section 1-305.
So how is the state board complying with that requirement for tomorrow? Do they have 418 listed on their agenda?
They have that they're considering emergency polling place / early voting center changes. That is correct.
So if we had not listed the precinct, we would have been legal. By listing the precinct, we're limited to talking about it?
No. I'm not going to opine as to whether the state's notice is consistent with what is actually set forth in 1-305. But I believe 1-305 requires that you actually specify the change that is being proposed.
What if our board were to indicate its intent of what it plans to do on Monday and communicate that to the state board along with whatever we decide on 418? The state board, by virtue of having given whatever notice they've given, would then, they can decide for themselves whether what they think is legal on that basis. Are they able to either decide to conditionally approve if we submit it to them, they will approve it, and if we submit it to them after Monday?
I don't know the answer to that, other than I don't see. If you're suggesting that something be put forth tomorrow as either a conditional approval as to one option or another option with notice being provided, that would be discussed and finalized at the state on Monday, and if the state board were willing to do that, then I think that would be fine.
Right. I mean, basically, what we would do is we would say that we can't take a final action. I'm not even sure we can take a tentative action. That would be up to you as to how you interpret what it says. But we're all here, we're all talking, and they're meeting tomorrow. So we don't, and we obviously don't have a time machine. But if we, it just seems like the purpose of the statute, and I don't disagree with how you're reading it. I'm just saying that I think that the purpose of the statute was to try to help the voters. This is an instance where the options are starkly different. It's not like we're saying that one is, in one direction and one's in the other direction. One is very close to where the voters are, and one is not. And there really was no way for us to know, before now. Anyway, I would think that if it's possible, if people are interested in this as an option, as a policy matter, I would hope that we could somehow find a way to communicate to the state board, what our intent is, and see, then they can do what they do.
Well, if the board wants to discuss B'nai Israel regarding 430, basically then we would take off B'nai Israel for 418 as a consideration.
Well,
because if the board votes to put
right, well, if the board votes to put B'nai Israel for 418, there's no issue.
There's no issue, right?
I will not vote for that, regardless of whether B'nai Israel is for 430 or not.
So why don't we do this?
Yeah.
And David,
Yeah.
there is validity in the fact that B'nai Israel is much more convenient than the people that are now going to Richard Montgomery. So what I would suggest, and everybody on the phone chime in. Why don't we talk about and consider the relocation of 418?
Right.
And if it's not going to B'nai Israel, then David's issue is still alive. If the board wants to put 418 at B'nai Israel, then there is no other issue. So why don't
Jim?
Yes.
Marianne, if I don't see how that works exactly, because we wouldn't be discussing B'nai Israel as a voting place for 418 if in fact it would be a voting place for 430.
Well,
so that issue flows both ways as I see it.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah, no, I see what you're saying, but the agenda item tonight is potential relocation of 418. So that's why we're here. So we've got to decide that tonight. I mean, that's the only issue that we're dealing with, is 418. So
okay, and then I guess the outcome of that earlier conversation on the legalities of what we can discuss tonight or not is that we would take up the issue of 430 tomorrow at the state board meeting.
Well, I'm not sure that.
No, I don't think we can. I mean, what Dave is saying is discussing 430 at the Monday meeting, and the board may, not want to do anything, not make a change, and leave it at Richard Montgomery.
Monday's too late for anything, isn't it? With the polling places, I mean, isn't the final alarm tomorrow?
Yes.
At the state board?
I think we would have to communicate in some way to the state board that we were considering a change. But we wouldn't be able to say that we've made a decision because we can't make a decision.
I see. It would have to be, yes, and maybe ask for, I guess we'd have to get some sort of permission.
Well, the state board may say, forget it. We're not
right. The state board may say, if you haven't voted on it, too bad, too late.
Right.
Yes,
right.
Exactly. Okay.
Right, they might.
When is the drop dead time to notify the state board?
It's tomorrow.
There's a state board meeting tomorrow at 2:30.
So their drop dead date, Alan, is tomorrow when they meet.
Okay, I had that feeling. Okay.
All right, can we talk? This is Nahid. Can we talk about 418?
Yeah, we're going to do right now.
Okay then. Listen, I went to Tilden Middle School. I drove around too, and I know about the church Old Georgetown Road. I believe the best place for 418 is Tilden Middle School. Has plenty space, parking, and it's going to be in a different area. It's going to be in gym, and the other one is in cafeteria. And I propose we go 418 with Tilden Middle School.
Yeah, I like, this is Jim, I like the Tilden Middle School too, just from what I've seen and heard.
If Nahid's was a motion, I'd be happy to second it.
I think she did.
Yeah, I
You have a motion, Nahid?
I think that was a
Is it?
motion.
That was her motion.
I think that was a motion.
Yeah, I moved the use Tilden Middle School for 418.
Is there a second?
I second it.
David?
I have a question.
Well, any discussion?
Yeah. Margaret, your email from this afternoon says small gym.
Okay.
What does that mean?
It's the regular gym. the regular sized gym is the air.
I can't hear.
Okay, I can't hear either.
Come on here.
It is the regular sized gym that we will be utilizing at the Tilden Middle School. Chris is taking over.
We have reserved the regular sized large gym at Tilden Middle School. It is the one that has air conditioning. The auxiliary gym does not.
Right.
Okay.
Just because generally we don't like to put two precincts in the same building. Chris, how do you feel about that?
I believe it is appropriate. The school system is accommodating to us. Most of the children, families that live in the area that we're talking about in 418, their students, their children go to Tilden Middle School. So they're certainly familiar with getting around and getting over to the middle school. I think it would be appropriate. And as I say, we have the support of MCPS. The building service manager will accommodate us, and we've made the reservation just in case that is your decision. We wanted to get ahead of that.
David?
As you know, two things. One thing for the record, which is that my wife works at Tilden Middle School. Not that that has anything to do with this, but I just put that on the record. And I did suggest this as an option when over the weekend by email. And I agree with everything that Chris said. A number of the things about this that I thought made it appealing. One of the biggest ones is that although it's a former high school building, which means it has more parking than the average middle school, it also really only has one main entrance. Right. And so since it only has one main entrance, it becomes a lot easier to direct people because you don't have to catch them in 4 different places in order to tell them where to go. The gym is very close to the main entrance, and the cafeteria is just down the hall. So you could probably get people as they come in and direct them to where they're going very easily. And there is, because it's a former high school, there's lots of parking, and so there would be sufficient parking for 2 polling places, at least in my opinion. And then the other thing is that although there are summer camps at Tilden Middle School during the rest of the summer, they are not meeting on election day. So, which means that we don't have competition.
That's correct. Community use several months ago asked to cooperate with MCPS and not have conflicting activities going on while we're there. So basically, in all of the school buildings, we will be the only activity on the 26th of June.
Oh, that's
Plus,
awesome.
there's no fee for a school, correct?
Correct.
No. Yeah.
Well done.
That's important. Alan, your insight into the church was very good. Appreciate it. But correct me if I'm wrong, Chris. Don't they have a daycare center at the church or something?
They do have a Montessori preschool, and their board met last night, and they feel that they can still accommodate us and not conflict with their other activities.
But they do have a daycare center.
It's a Montessori preschool.
Okay.
And there will be a donation fee.
And there would be a fee at the church too.
Do we know how much?
Right. Yes. Yes.
How much is the fee?
Was an amount named?
It is not a requested amount, Margaret, and I have discussed it. They request a donation, so we thought 500 was fair.
500.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Overall, I support Nahid's motion. Any other discussion?
This is Mary Ann. I support the motion. I think Tilden Middle School will work out well for this. For anyone who may be interested, generally speaking, I do not like to put 2 precincts in the same location, just because, it obviously can contribute to confusion and problems.
Neither do I.
Potentially. However, and I was opposed to Richard Montgomery for 4:30 for several reasons, but one of them was the fact that we were, going to be putting 2 precincts there. But worse than that, we were putting 2 precincts in the same location within Richard Montgomery. I think the difference here is that each precinct will be in a different location in the building, one in the gym and one in the cafeteria, and that'll alleviate that problem. I don't feel there's a problem necessarily with Trinity Lutheran, but generally speaking, we try to have public facilities. I think it's one of our requirements, isn't it? If possible, we're supposed to, and it seems like Tilden Middle School fits the bill.
Exactly. Thank you.
Any further discussion? All right,
before you vote, yeah, I understand. I'm just wondering whether, since we do have limitations that are based on the agenda, I'm wondering whether it would be appropriate for me to propose an amendment here that just indicates that that the board would like to inform the state board that we would like to seriously consider about precinct 430. And plan to discuss it on Monday.
Let's voting that 418, David, and then we jump to the other issue.
Well, what I'm concerned about, Nahid, is because of the legal situation here, that if we don't tie it to the 418 action, that we may not be able to discuss it. Is the limitation on taking action, or is it on discussion?
I'm trying to figure out. If you move 418 to
Tilden Middle School, and then right,
and then the next question is moving 430 to some other location.
Right. Well, I guess what I'm asking is the law that you read us earlier that has those limitations and says that you have to notice in advance, etc. Is that to take action, or is that to put it on the agenda for discussion? In other words, if we, once we're here, were to decide after voting on this motion that we're going to have a discussion of the other without taking action, are we in compliance with that statute? Because if the answer to that is no, then I would want to propose an amendment here.
You can't take any action. So it means any action relating to voter registration.
Okay, so we can have the conversation.
But why don't you do it as a separate
Okay,
motion?
no, that's fine. No,
it directs.
Okay, that's fine.
Because I think at the end of the day, David, what's going to happen here is Margaret and I are going to sit down and write a letter that's going to go to Linda and Nikki to be given to the state board members.
Right.
Which we've started but didn't know what locations to plug in.
Right.
But we can also then alert them that
right.
there may be this issue as
right.
it relates to 430.
Right.
And the board would like,
right.
perhaps, if you all wish,
right.
a tentative blessing subject to us being able to comply with the notice provisions and discuss it on Monday.
Sounds like you're ready to write the letter.
All right, so we're just okay. Voting on Nahid's motion
right.
to move the 418 precinct to Tilden Middle School. Yes. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Marianne, Alan?
Aye.
Alan doesn't.
Marianne's aye.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's 4 ayes and no one's opposed. Is that correct? Okay.
Yes.
So we're moving 418 to Tilden Middle School. Okay. And did you have?
Well, now it's just a question. I don't know what the appropriate motion is because I don't want to make a motion that violates the statute.
I don't think you want to do a motion. I
right.
think you want to give direction that you want the staff to include in the letter that there is the possibility of a change at 4:30 that the board would like to discuss on Monday but would be discussed at tomorrow's board meeting to see whether there can be tentative approval
Right.
of it, subject to notice and an opportunity for the board and
Right.
members to be heard on that
Right.
at our meeting on Monday.
I think would want to say that explicitly that it's because of this statute. Basically, I wouldn't want the state board to think that we're just incapable of giving them a decision. That it's because of the statute that we are.
Because of the statute and the fact that we did not have a decision until within the 48-hour period.
Right, exactly.
But Kevin, is that going too
Exactly.
far to ask for tentative approval? Because the board may say no to B'nai Israel.
Right.
Well, it's not asking. It's asking just for. I think what we want is for the state to say that you can.
If you change it, it's okay with us, and if you don't, it's okay with us.
If you elect, if you meet on Monday and after hearing public comment you decide to change it, we don't have an objection to it. And if you meet on Monday and after you've heard public comment and discuss it, you don't want to change it, that's okay with us as well.
Okay. So there's no commitments. It's just
Correct.
I also think that in the letter that goes forward, it should somehow be stated that the issue of the availability of B'nai Israel didn't become known to us until the search in 418.
that.
Do you see what I mean?
No, that's important.
Yes.
Yeah, we just learned about B'nai Israel being available for 418.
Yes. We didn't know before today, this morning or last night, whenever it was, at 418, that they would consider being a polling place.
Right.
Yeah, that's very important because it ties in with what's on the agenda.
Right.
That we didn't learn about B'nai Israel until we decided to discuss 418.
Yep.
That's good. Okay.
What Kevin said works for me.
All right. I mean,
if others are comfortable.
If there any other discussion, is there a motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
Do you need a motion for what you're talking about?
See you Monday.
Okay.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Monday at 2:00.
No one's opposed.
Right. A little early.
Thank you, everybody.